Welcome back to the Total Defined Entertainment production in correlation with your boy Edubz and the Dream Teams. Unfortunately, you see my guy, Bills, who's usually sitting to my right. We have this special guest here today who's sitting by our right, who happens to be related to my man Bills. But Bills, man, get better, get well, man. We hope to see you back on the set soon. We always appreciate you, your hard work and your diligence. But listen, man, we got a real special guest in the building today. Let me pay a couple bills before we get started. Of course, we're in association with Corray Creations. We're in association with PIW, that's Putting in Work Entertainment.
Putting in work.
Bills! And of course, there's always your boy Edubz coming from the Dream Team. So today we got somebody who I've been knowing pretty much my whole entire life. I mean, this guy's been so dynamic with so many different things. Some of the things that he's going to share with us today, I think will enlighten you guys just on how great a humanitarian this guy is. Not only that, the way he gives back to the community, and also just, his all-around personality as a person. Without any further ado, of course, I got Mr. BRYANT GREENE, who's also the proprietor of Always Best Care Senior Living. So we'll pass that over to my man Knox. You give us a little bio on my boy Brian before we get into giving him a couple questions about things that he's got going on and what he's doing outside today.
Yes, I see you did doing a lot of great things, my brother. I commend you for that. Everything that you're doing. I see that you were a graduate from Central High School.
246.
And you also went to textiles and science. Like, you was top of your class on that. Congratulate you on that. And
can't forget about his bachelor's at Virginia State.
Oh, yes,
we
sir.
Can't forget about them days.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I see you also been a resident for South Jersey for many, many years. And you also have a farm going on over there.
Rescue farm. Yes, indeed.
That you've been doing. So you have a lot going on, brother. And it's actually great to meet you in person. And we appreciate you coming on this podcast to give us a little background of what you're doing and what you're wanting to continue to do.
Thank you guys for having me. I am super, super proud of you guys with the whole podcast. And to tell you the truth, this is my first time being on a podcast, and I was excited. I was like,
we appreciate you, bro. For sure.
Definitely do.
It took you a minute to get here, but we appreciate you.
Listen, I'm here, representing, for Edub, Al Bills, and Knox. I'm a huge fan of you guys, and I'm just glad I could be here today.
Appreciate it.
So let me ask you, just from my perspective, I know because I know you, but I don't think our fans know, and I think they want to know, how did you get started in this business to even get into senior living and healthcare, that whole dynamic? How did that start?
Well, believe it or not, after several years in corporate America, I was laid off.
Okay.
Like so many Americans at that time, it was the outro of Bush and the intro of Obama. I found myself on the line looking for a job. And it was a time really where I was competing with probably people that had 10, 15 years more experience willing to work for less.
Okay.
And while I was out looking for, an opportunity at what they called it back then, a pink slip party. It was a diversity career fair. I'll never forget it. And I walked it was being held at the Wells Fargo, which is in South Philadelphia. And I walked into there, and I wasn't going to go. Let me say that. I wasn't going to go because at that point, it was just the job lines, the unemployment was just such a high volume of people. I just thought it was going to be a bunch of employers really doing lip service. I had almost talked myself out of it.
Okay.
And I think that's an important other part of the story because, I was battling my inner critic. But I got up my courage and I went to this Wells Fargo career fair / diversity pink slip party, whatever they were calling it. And as suspected, I started handing out resumes all around. And I looked up and I seen this long line of applicants way around. If you know anything about the Wells Fargo, it's an oval floor plan. So I said, wow, this job, this employer must really be hiring. And someone said to me, before you stand in this long line, walk up and see who the employer is. So I did, and I walked up and seen who the employer was. I looked up, it was Comcast. people had just laid me off. And I'm past the statute of limitations now, so I can talk about it freely. So the same people that had given me my walk-in papers were the same people accepting resumes.
Wow.
And at that moment, it was really awkward. And so I kind of walked away as if somebody had punched me in the gut. And just as I'm walking away, this unassuming guy jumps in my face and says, "Hey, have you ever thought about buying a franchise?"
Wow.
And I said, "Who in the hell will buy a franchise in the bowels of a recession?" He says, "Humor me. If you could start any business right now, what would it be?" And flippantly, I said, "A strip club." And that's what he did. He started laughing. He said, "Wow, you're really serious?" I said, "Well, what other job is recession-proof? What are you selling?" So he said, "Let me look at your resume." And when he looked at my resume, he said, "Well, a lot of people are saying at that time, you can't find a job. And when you don't have a job, that's not a compliment. It's a punch in the gut, another punch in the gut." And so we exchanged back and forth. And so he says, "Well, why don't you come out to my office?" And I reluctantly, in my head, I said, "You know what, it's time for me to stop being flippant." He's the only guy that's really engaged me in conversation.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
He introduced me to 4 turnkey operations. The one that appealed to me the most was senior care. Because my mother started young, you know that.
Yeah.
We've had the blessing and benefit of having, not only our grandmothers, but our great-grandmothers. So senior care in our family is almost something that we did just because, not because we had to, but because it was just out of love, right? Yeah. But from a business perspective, I had to learn the business. I had to learn what it meant. People have to trust you. People have to refer to you. And right now in Pennsylvania, to keep it a buck, as the young people say, there are over 4,000 home care agencies in the state of Pennsylvania, and most of them are on this side of the state. Wow. So that's how I got started. 15 years later, we have I'm really proud of the business that we've created. And that's how it got started.
Well, let me ask you then. So what are your biggest challenges? What do you find yourself challenged with the most when it comes to being in this space? As you say, in this space, and it being so much competition, basically.
Competition is a really, really big challenge, but these days it's multidimensional. The biggest challenge that we're facing now is really the workforce.
Okay.
The workforce is challenging. A lot of the work is part-time, and because of the regulatory level of Medicaid and Medicare, we're not afforded the luxury of really offering a competitive salary.
Okay.
And so if it's not a competitive salary, if you're in home care and you're a worker, you really have to like what you're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the workforce from whence we came is very different. No disrespect to my younger folks that are in the workforce, but the work ethic is very different. People are not as dedicated and as driven and as inspired to do the job. So a lot of times we're walking them to work. But shout out to my great caregivers. I don't want this to go out there like everybody's bad. No, we have some really incredible people that are doing it. But workforce is a challenge. The regulations is a challenge. As I said before, the Medicare reimbursement rate right now, Pennsylvania is the lowest in Medicaid reimbursement in the contiguous states, which means all the states like Jersey, Delaware, West Virginia is even higher than us. So we're not afforded the luxury of paying people. Right now in Pennsylvania, the Medicaid reimbursement that agencies get is $21 and change.
Really?
And so if you're paying somebody $14, $15 an hour, that doesn't leave a really big gap for profitability.
Okay.
So we're razor thin on the margins. You make it up and buy them, but that's the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge is that, and regulatory, and people really understanding what Medicaid really means. A lot of times you'll hear people talk about you can take care of your loved one for free. Well, it's not free. It's a part of the budget. And honestly, there are rules involved with that. You got to come for the training.
Okay.
You gotta clock in and out using your phone system.
Okay.
There's a lot of different regulatory challenges that we're faced with.
Yeah. And on that note, right, now I just wanted to go back a little bit. When we talk about challenges, right, and you starting, where was your first office actually at, and how many offices do you currently have at this moment?
We started, it's an interesting story. Thank you for asking that. We started in Bristol, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Right there at 213 Mill Street. And it was a little 500 square foot office. And I'll never forget, my grandparents painted that office.
Get out.
Yeah, they paid that.
So we kept it in the family.
Yeah, absolutely.
All in the family.
My grandfather was close to retirement, but he wasn't retired. At that point, my grandmother was driving him to jobs.
Oh my God!
Talk about work ethic, and I never forget it. We had a 500 square foot office on Mill Street, and we did everything there. And it's funny, we reflect on that when I'm having leadership meetings. I often reflect on our first phone system. You had call waiting. When we got our first printer, when we got our first big copier, that was a Facebook post.
Okay.
You know, every like nut and bolt to the company really was an achievement. When we got our first fax machine, our first printer, our first ads, you know, I remember when we used to go to these vendor health fairs and that kind of thing. My aunt Valerie on my father's side, she through AC Crafts and Moores, she made our first poster boards.
Wow.
Okay, and so when we would go, and I had a little jar, I never forget, I had a little jar of dollar store candy. And that would bring people to the table, and they would look at us like we were the Cosby kids. Like, who's this little agency over here? This little ghetto agency you have over here.
With the small table.
With the small table. But we was out there talking to King's English, trying to get business, hustling starter cares and that kind of thing. And now I'm proud to say after 15 years, we have 6 offices.
Oh, beautiful. That deserves an applause.
Yes, it does.
That goes to show you folks, my fans, everybody on this YouTube channel. Like I said, y'all can always reach us on Total Define Entertainment. It's coming from your boy Edubz, my man Knox. We missing my man Bills. And as you see, we got the proprietor of Always Best Care, Mr. BRYANT GREENE.
Shout out to Al Bills too, because that's my baby brother. If you didn't know, and he and I got
cheers, he would say.
Get the. That's the
definitely.
He's the director of customer service down in our Pennsylvania office down on Broad Street. We miss him today. We do wish him well, but
yes, we do.
You know, it's funny. I always tell people that I'm always approached about people that are interested in starting their own business, and there's a difference between being on somebody's payroll and making payroll. Making payroll is no joke. Because people want to get paid whether you're doing good or bad in the business.
That's a fact.
It's a whole thing. So,
that's
you have to really level up that way and think of it that way from a business. And every win, there's a lose. And every experience is just that, an experience. But what I would say to people that are listening to this great podcast is that you have to check your inner critic. Oftentimes, you will talk yourself out of something.
That's a fact.
You know, you become your own worst enemy when you shut the blinds on your own dreams.
That's a fact.
There were times when I was extremely low. I mean, looking back on it reflectively, there were times I thought, "Oh my God, what did I do? I made a mistake."
Yeah.
But I woke up every morning. I used to play this song. For people that know me, that follow me, they know that Tina Marie is probably my favorite artist ever. And she has this song, "Keep Your Irons in the Fire." And I would play that from time to time because that's what life was. It was just really keeping your irons in the fire. So somebody needs to hear that.
Yeah, that's a fact.
You know, pay attention to your inner critic and keep the dream killers away. You know, it's up to you to plant the seed of your flower that turns into hopefully a tree and repot it as necessary. But stay away from the dream killers that really don't mean you really well. And sometimes dream killers come at you, and I don't know if people that follow, William Shakespeare, but there's this character in Othello called Iago. Iago plants the seed of hate. Mm-hmm. Not directly, but indirectly. They'll come at you and slither into your space and into your circle and try to really mess with your moon. And before you know it, you're double thinking and you're unsure and that kind of thing. You got to keep the dream killers away. It's important.
You're questioning yourself.
Right. Your own inner critic. Your imposter syndrome. You got to really pay attention that you're not. You belong where you belong.
Right. You can't let that get inside you.
And that's a fact because being at what you do and now seeing the progress that you've made, what would you consider your proudest moment at this point in time that you've accomplished with your business? And then we'll get into some personal things. I got some other things I want to ask you before we have to let this very important young man go today. But I wanted to ask you, what are you most proud of? Because I know, sometimes people ask me that same question, and it's a variation. It depends really on the day. So I know for me, that dynamic changes. But for you, coming from, the business that you come from, the things that you do, what would you consider your proudest moment or what you're most proud of?
I am most proud of the fact, being a black man, being able to tell the story that I built a multicultural and more an intergenerational team. It's important in the time and frame where you have people that are attacking diversity, equity, and inclusion as something bad. I think that's proud. Knowing from whence we came.
Yes, no doubt.
You know, everybody has their modest, you know, history and story and that kind of a deal, but it's important to represent in a way that other people that come behind us, people that are beside us, can be proud. You know, we put together a business that we're really proud of. We do a service that we're proud of. And we really try to meet people where they are. And the beauty of that is it comes back twofold. When you have, you know, people, you know, another thing I'm proud of, I've been able to create some scholarships.
Definitely, yes.
And so I've been able to help.
That needs to be applauded, y'all.
That's
Listen,
wonderful. That's
applaud
wonderful.
that.
Thank you.
You see that? We got some folks out here that do care and do reach back.
It's important because once you reach back, you don't always have to reach back in a monetary way. You don't it doesn't have to always be money.
Right.
A lot of times I go back and I speak to first-generation college students. I speak to young parents because the reality of it is my mother was 17. My mother was 17 years older than me, right? And so sometimes you get caught up in this circle of, you know, defeat, and you develop this defeatist attitude. So I tell the story that, yeah, my mother was a single mother, but she didn't make any excuses.
I know that's right.
Life was hard, but you know what? It's going to be all right because, you know, out of the hardness comes a lesson, comes a testimony, comes a story. And if you're able to share that and show people that whatever they're going through, you can get through it.
Right.
Okay, and go ahead, Nels. I'm sorry.
Like going back to what you said earlier about speaking to people, person spoke to you.
Absolutely.
And maybe you wouldn't be sitting here
That's a fact.
having this, you know, testimony and everything that you're doing
That's
if
a
that
fact.
person didn't break the ice and speak to you. You
Yeah.
know, that conversation started from something funny to something real.
And I want to
You
touch
know?
on that because I want you to talk about someone who helped you tremendously in this fight that you battled through to get to where you are. Talk about that gentleman. Talk about that man that helped you start your partnership with the business for Always Best Care, was a living legend for me. I mean, was a great guy, was somebody who always greeted me with sincerity, man. And I mean, just his humbleness, the way you guys even integrated together was awesome just to see it just come to fruition. So talk about him a little bit. And God bless his soul.
God bless, rest in peace, Tony Belladino is who you're talking about. But before I get to Tony, I want to give props to my grandfather.
Oh, no doubt about it.
Oftentimes, we don't realize that we're for those that watch Karate Kid, we don't realize that we're in the wax on, wax off moment. I tell stories about how my grandfather was extremely hard on us as a kid. Just to give you kind of, for example, we would be taking, I've been on this job since I was 5 years old. I didn't start getting yelled at and worked out until I was about 8 or 9, right? But I remember very clearly, you know, being on the job, and it would be, you know, the plumber's son or the carpenter's nephew, the painter's grandson, and, you know, this one and that one. This call us the apprentices. And then, you know, you would have all of the bosses, and they all smoked El Producto cigars, and they wanted suspenders.
That's why we bought you some cigars today, young man.
We put that out, so the first thing I thought about was my grandfather.
I knew that.
Cigars out. And so they would be over there talking about their next big job. And, you know, I got this big job working this, that, everything. And we would be over in a little huddle, the apprentices, and we would be like, I hate them. Whatever, white, black, Italian, all of us. And then somebody would say, hey, asshole. And then somebody say, we say, yes, all of us.
At the same time,
At the same time. Yes, master, what do you want? You know, that kind of thing. But he instilled in me, before we get to Tony, he instilled in me work ethic.
Yeah.
There are days when you wake up as an entrepreneur where you feel like your blanket is a 10-pound slab, a 100-pound slab of concrete. But you still have to face the day, because if you don't show up, then you can't expect anybody else to show up. And and being a painter, sometimes for those that are homeowners or you've had a painting job, sometimes it's not right. You know, people wait till the last. I remember very clearly people waiting until the last minute and saying that's not what I thought it was going to be. And he would have to go in there. As much as he yelled and screamed at us, he would let us know, you know, by example, negotiating. Okay, well, this is what you asked for. You know, you wanted a flat, but we suggested an eggshell, and so forth and so on. The interesting thing about Tony Belladino was, Tony and I met years ago. I lived in Ben Salem for probably about 7-8 years. And anyway, when I started this...
Talking about the apartment?
The apartment.
I remember that.
The apartment across the street from Franklin Mills.
Yes,
And see, you remember those days.
Oh, yeah, I
we
do.
can't go into that.
Whole other conversation.
It's a whole other situation, a whole other season. But I remember meeting Tony as a real estate agent, and I could never get a house at that time because of my debt to income ratio. That's where it started. And to move it along.
Imagine that, and look at you now.
Wait, so after all of that, we've been friends for some time, and then I'm starting this business in this bowels of recession. And the franchisor wanted me to start in Lower Bucks County because they felt that the income median was stronger than that of Philadelphia, where I was more connected.
Okay.
Nothing could have been further from the truth because our first probably 3 or 4 clients were from Philadelphia.
Wow.
But even in that, it was a learning experience for Tony even because, when I started this business, I couldn't afford to pay people. I took the business plan around to a few people that really, loved the plan, but weren't in a position to put their sweat equity in it because they needed to get paid, right? And so Tony and my Aunt Valerie kind of poured themselves into this cup of enthusiasm and perseverance. And the ingredients there was very interesting. And what I tell people, Tony, for those people that don't know who Tony Belladino is, Tony was this big presence of a white man. And keep in mind why I'm saying it this way, oftentimes when we would go out and try to evangelize the brand of Always Best Care, Tony and I would sit across the table from social workers or referral sources and the like, and oftentimes they would talk directly to him.
Wow.
Even after me making the introduction, or he making the introduction that I'm the director of operations and he's the owner, this is the entrepreneur, BRYANT GREENE, blah, 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 they would still talk to him. Now, in your mind, a lot of people will probably think the people sitting on the other side of that table were non-minorities or white people. But oftentimes, people sitting on the other side of that table were people of color.
Wow.
And that was the lesson for Tony, because he thought right then, he was like, oh, wow. And I would tell him, I would kick his chair, like, keep talking. Because we're in this spirit of we don't turn nothing down but our collar.
Exactly.
Right.
And we know how the DNA of this world is made up of. We know how people have the self-segregating. And so the interesting thing, too, and the way I explained it to Tony, too, was like, even minorities, when they look at some, like maybe let's just use Jiffy Lube for an example. Some people might want to go to the Bala Kenwood Jiffy Lube before they go to the Southwest Jiffy Lube because in their mind they think that they're going to get better service in Bala Kenwood. It's the same thing when you have a white and black person.
Yeah, people get that totally that's big misconception.
Big misconception of that. And so for him, it was like he knew in the back of his mind, I always tell him, I said, you're going to be the white face in some ways, but you're not going to be a white face just to white people. You're going to be a white face to black people too. And so as time evolved, of course, more people talked to me, and we kind of developed the relationships. But in the embryonic stages of the business, it absolutely was like that. And this is like early 2000s. So it wasn't like a 1, 2, 3 snap.
Yeah.
But I want to say that and share that story with people because when you look at the world, I knew there was going to be people that were not going to be accepted to a black man being the boss. It's okay.
Yeah.
In the world, again, we don't turn down nothing but our collar. Whoever's talking about it, whoever's going to write the check, whoever's going to do the business, that's what we're going to do business with. And we're just going to show from that perspective our reputation and our consistency that we're out here.
All right. So that being said, right, and thinking about all of the things that you talked about when you touch on your business, and then we're going to get into some of your personal endeavors that you have going on. But what are the core groups that you actually service? So who do you actually service? And let the people know because they need to understand what does Always Best Care truly, who do they do? Who's the core people that you work directly with?
So Always Best Care Senior Services is a home care agency. We service seniors mostly. But if somebody has had a hip or knee replacement, a back injury, if you're recovering from a stroke or battling cancer, if you're battling COVID, if you're 18 and over, you're an amputee, you're somebody that has blindness, somebody that needs help in the home from anywhere from 2 hours to 24-hour live-in. We service the metropolitan area of Philadelphia, surrounding counties, in the whole state of Delaware, and we're proud of that. We have a whole army of caregivers out there that are, some are very experienced and are CNAs, and we have others that are companions.
Let me ask you, on that note, how do you, when you internally look for people to, I guess, come to your, I guess, using them for a service, right? And you're talking about, from 2 hours to 24-hour care. How do you justify in terms of, is it just anybody you send, or do you have particular individuals that you'll send on certain jobs, or if I just say if they're able to, in terms of their ability to do the job, in terms?
I'm glad you asked that question.
Yeah, because
that's a very good question. Home care agencies, and mine is included, we play a special part in matchmaking.
Okay.
So when we come to your home to do what we call a starter care interview, we want to know the person or individual that we're taking care of, whether they're a teacher, whether they're a retired clinician, whether somebody a government worker, or there's somebody that is chatty Cathy, or they're a smoker. Do they like crossword puzzles or Sudoku, or do they just take stock in people watching? Do they have pets? Do you have a lot of pets?
Right.
Or are you a hoarder? You know, we have all of those kind of factors that go in, because it is a match. We're on the low. Home care is a matchmaking situation.
Got you.
Because I don't want to send somebody in your house that's a smoker and you're not a smoker.
Right.
You know, and vice versa. I don't want to send somebody into your home that is allergic to cats and you got 3 cats. You know what I mean? So we try to talk. We try to talk to the problem. We talk to the issues. A lot of people are resistant to home care. And so I always often tell people, and this is part 2 of that kind of thought process, is your family member or loved one supportive of the idea of somebody coming in and helping them? Because oftentimes what I tell people, or what we tell people, is we have to get into the family. If there's multiple siblings or one sibling or a niece or nephew or somebody in the church that can guide the conversation. For instance, it's been my experience when there's multiple siblings, it's either the oldest or the youngest sibling that has the most influence.
Wow.
And if you're not that person, then you're not the person that needs to be talking to mom or dad. You know, you need to have a person in that room that is going to assume the responsibility and really guide to say, Mom, you really need this. Dad, you know what? You really need this. Because I think about it, and the reality of it is, nobody is an expert of getting old. We all go this way but once. You know? And so when you're at that point where you want to stay home, you know, like, I give an example. She won't be a little bit mad, but my grandmother, you know,
hey, Chubb, I didn't do this.
She is the best example of it, because she's a retired clinician and she is used to taking care of people. But the whole idea of her receiving care was a challenge in the beginning.
My grandmother was like that.
You know, she wanted to take care of the, you know, she's Mother Goose. She wants to take care of the caregivers. Like, no, they got to take care of you. You know, and so, and we laugh about it now, but for a while, you know, even with my grandfather at first did not want care. He absolutely refused.
Wow.
And then we come across that a lot. You know, he's independent, he's prideful, you know, all that kind of thing. But when my grandmother started getting care, and he said, okay, I get care too. So we had one caregiver. I'll never forget it. And I always use the story in training sometimes. We had one caregiver for the both of them. And I never forget the time my grandfather called me in a huff and said, well, why do I have to wait? Because the caregiver would do my grandmother for 4 hours and she would do him for the second 4 hours. Why do I have to wait until she gets finished? Why can't I? We wound up having to get 2 caregivers.
Wow.
And then I got my caregiver and she has her caregiver. You know, we go through that on that level, and we go through another thing that's important. And while we're talking about it, you have a lot of people that are not diverse. I don't want that foreigner in my home. If they can't speak English, I don't want them in my house.
That's something.
And that's not just a white person thing. There's a whole lot of minorities who say the whole thing too.
Wow.
And, you know, I don't want them in here. But then we say, well, listen, it's routine. You're still in charge. They're here to assist you. Nobody has taken over control. You're in control.
Yeah.
And you would be surprised how many people that resist care in the beginning, at the end of it say, oh, is Sally coming? You know, if Sally doesn't, then the challenge then becomes that Sally has to take a day off or wants to take vacation. Yeah, so they don't want nobody else.
Right, because they're used to Sally.
Right. And Sally could be a minority. She could be, and if I'm going to keep it real, you know, in the spirit of, you hear about mass deportation, I think a strong part of our workforce, not the only strong part of our workforce, but certainly a strong part of the workforce, you know, I've had great experience hiring immigrants. Immigrants, African, Russian Jews, Indian, Asian, Latino, you know, that can just say Mexican, Bolivian, Venezuelan, Ecuadorian, Hondurans, Nicaraguans. Everybody. I need to
So
say
your
that.
company is truly diverse.
We absolutely are. And I'm proud of it.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
As long as you get the job
Yeah,
done.
that's a good thing.
You put your cell phone down, you go in there, and you ain't giving nobody the neck, you ain't fresh, you show up on time, you do
I
what
know
you're supposed
that's
to
right.
You
do.
say you ain't fresh.
You know like grandma would say you fresh.
No
you,
sexual harassment cases.
Listen,
So-
fresh in the sense of that lip. The lips is moving too much.
So listen, now we're going to change gears a little bit.
Okay.
I've been to your home. I've been to what you've done over there with this rescue farm, and I think it's so awesome just to be able to do what you're doing. But where did that come from? And if I don't want to kind of talk out of turn, but I just know when we were younger, we went to a place that somebody else had a bunch of animals that we visited a whole lot during the summer months. But did that spurn your idea once you did get to that point of getting a rescue farm, or how did that all start?
You know, a lot of people, and this is going to be in the book that I'm writing, and so...
And let them know where they can reach you at, just so they'll know.
So you can check me out at teamgreenabc.com. You can check me out. I also have a radio show at wrdradio.com.
We're going to be on there soon, y'all.
Yes, 4 p.m. on Saturdays, and I have a TV show also Saturdays at 7 a.m. You can check us out on Channel 21 for Comcast and Channel 19 for Verizon. The Did You Know show is centered around connecting people to home, community, and business resources that you ordinarily wouldn't know about. So we have everything from Alzheimer's, lupus, cancer, reentry programs, educational programs, grants. Today, I'm going to be talking to an elected official about some of his goals for the city of Philadelphia. But a lot of people don't know that, you know, when I was looking at high schools, well, first of all, I've always loved animals.
Okay.
When I was thinking about matriculating into high school, I had an opportunity. I got accepted to Saul Biddle and Central. And I never forget, when we went to go visit Saul Biddle, which is the agriculture school up above Roxborough, the guidance counselor said, well, you know, part of the recreation, part of what we do here, you have to get here about 7 o'clock in the morning to shovel poop. And I was like...
This was your first opportunity?
This was my first opportunity to go to Central or Saul Biddle.
To shovel shit.
Listen. And my mother looked at me, and I looked at her. So I live in West Philly. I don't live far from where we're taping at. So that would have meant back then I'd have take maybe 2.5 buses across town. So I'd have been leaving my house about 5:30.
Wow.
So that was the Debbie Downer. And then I went to summer camp several years as a youth, overnight camp where I took care of the animals.
Okay.
So that's where it started. And then as I got successful in the business, one of my dreams has always been, you know, personally, my dreams have always been centered around 2 individuals on TV. I watch a lot of TV. It was George Jefferson and J.R. Ewing. Mm-hmm. And I always thought about...
That's 2 dynamics right there.
2 different dynamics.
Yeah,
different
reasons. Yeah.
The power of J.R. Ewing and then the motivation and proudness of George Jefferson.
Definitely.
But the farm and the ranch and the animals and all that kind of thing, you know, I like animals more than I like people. And I love people, but I love animals more. I mean, let me quantify that, because some people are like, well, you know, no, animals bring us a certain center of peace for me. The animals that I rescue on my farm is Uncle B's Rescue Farm. You can check us out, Uncle B's BEZ Rescue Farm.
Y'all hear it?
.org. We rescue horses, donkeys, ponies. I raise alpacas. We're down to about 5 or 6 goats. I have 9 barn cats and 3 dogs. At one point, we had pigs and sheep, and we got rid of those. You know, that the long death or whatever. But animals kind of have a sense of way of bringing calm, and so we accept visitors from church groups, the Girl Scouts, the Cub Scouts, the Wolf Pack, soccer teams, kids with additional needs. I have a soft spot for kids with additional needs because I raise a child with visual needs. So, you know, we've had, you know, schools come out, kids with everything from blindness to paranoid schizophrenia or behavioral issues. And it's always fun to see the kids come and just zen with the animals.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So
that's beautiful. Now, let me ask you, I mean, with all of this you got going on, bro, how do you decompress? How do you turn the switch off? I mean, I know me and you stay on the phone sometimes 2-3 hours and just bust it up, but...
At 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
I know, right? But so how does that work for you? I know for me, when I get off work, a lot of times I come home, I plop on the couch, get something to drink, of course, you know, whatever else I'm doing. But for the most part, I'm just kind of, like you said, getting into my zen where I'm just letting the world just kind of slip away and just kind of get into my own mood. For you, what does that look like? For Bryant Greene when he's dealing with so many different entities?
It's a challenge. I'm involved and pulled into a lot of different things. What I will say is that over the years, I've become a steward of boundaries and being able to say no.
Okay.
And sometimes saying no politely is just that. No, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it.
Yeah.
And cut out a little space for me. I'm not a big vacationer because I'm a homebody, believe it or not, on the couch.
Yeah.
But I'm on the couch. I am a movie person. I love series. I used to read a lot. I don't read as much as I used to. My daughter just recently reminded me of that because we have all these books.
Breezy, love you, Breezy.
And we have a lot of books, but for me, it's times I could be in the house by myself and just sit and just kind of meditate.
I feel you.
I've gotten more into that. I've gotten more into self-care. I try to get a massage at least twice a week.
Man, I need to come visit you.
Listen, I try to do different things for me, but mostly spending time on the farm with the animals and just quiet time.
Yeah.
But being a steward, and I heard Keke Palmer say this a little while ago, and it kind of resonated with me. If you don't set up boundaries for yourself, then nobody else is going to respect any boundaries.
Yeah, that's
and
a
so, fact. For a while, it was just yes. Now it's a polite no, or I'll get back to you.
Yeah, that's the easiest way to say no to somebody, too.
Yeah,
I'll get back to you. I don't know when, but I'm going to get back to you. Hey, listen, again, man, y'all can reach us on Total Define Entertainment. That's on your YouTube channel. Again, we got my man Bryant Greene here today. Great humanitarian. Y'all hear his story. Y'all can reach him. You already know he done exposed that to y'all, but I'm going to let him finish that when we get pretty much wrapping this show up. I got my man Knox here today. You got any other questions for my man B before we
What I would like to say, what really kept you strong during your weakest times that you felt things were like about to just fall, like completely collapse for you? Like what kept your faith and your strength to keep moving?
That's a great question.
That's an awesome question.
Yeah.
The blessing again for me has been reflectively that my mother started young. And because of that, we had the benefit of blessing of
Sandy.
Grandparents and great-grandparents for a time until adulthood. Mm-hmm. And the wisdom, and not just them, their peer group. Let me say that. Their peer group, not just them, their peer group. And so I often reflect on my great-grandmother's words. And she didn't if I could have just had an ounce of her wisdom, and she didn't have a formal education, she'd get past 6th grade. But just some of her stories as when she was coming along, when she escaped a sharecropper situation, when women weren't allowed to vote, when women couldn't buy houses by themselves, when black people, when we had to be buttoned up in the sundown counties. When I hear about those stories and I marginalize it against what's going on now, when I oftentimes deal with people with additional needs, I never call them special because the world doesn't treat you special.
Exactly.
When I think about people that are dealing with other things, but when I get low, and it never stops. We go through low highs and lows all the time. But I just kind of sit down and I just say, you know what? My grandmother used to say it all the time, just take your hand off of it. Take your hand off of it and sit still and just let this, it's going to happen one way or the other.
What you tell me, organically, right?
Organically, it's going to happen, and God be the glory. And I'm not going to fake you out. I'm not in church every Sunday. Don't get it twisted. But
this ain't that church group, y'all. This ain't that.
I am rooted in the Word,
Definitely.
and I feel like we are all small fragments in His imagination. And what we've done and what we continue to do is already ordained in some form or fashion. And I just say it's not that deep. Tomorrow the sun is going to come up. It may rain a little bit, but after the rain, you got pretty flowers that come out.
That's right.
And I just said to myself, you know what? This is life. It'll be all right. With every loss, there's an experience. You come out better on the other side. And I get low a lot. It's not something that comes and goes.
And this is one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on our platform, man. I wanted everybody to see the reason why a young brother like himself, who's been through, as you heard, from the mud, give him his flowers, give him what he deserves. And this is something that we don't do often enough in our own culture. Celebrating the ones who you don't see every day in front of the TV, who you don't hear all the time on the radio, even though he's on both. But understanding that, like, just because he's on a certain plateau, he does not deviate from the ultimate plan, which is always trying to help the fellow man get further in life. And with that being said, man, what else do you have on the horizon, bro? Like, what's coming? What do we got to look forward to? I know you got some great things lined up, because I'm definitely going to be a part of it for sure. So what we got coming, man? What we got coming?
Well, we got a lot of different things coming on. I am in the process of building a dispensary, a cannabis dispensary, Uncle B's Greeneries. The grass is always greener at Uncle B's. That's the last business that I'm probably going to start. That's happening. I've already had a license, and we finally got a last building approval to start over in South Jersey.
Applaud that, y'all. That's a blessing.
That's where it's legal at.
Even though y'all might not share the cannabis love the way we do, but that's blessings. Trust me.
And it's a lot of different things going on with the university. I've been asked. I'll say this, and I can't say it all, but I will say that I've been invited to be the commencement speaker for this year's graduation at Thomas Jefferson University.
Oh man, bless another applause, folks. Yes.
I'm going to deliver. I'm in my head about trying to deliver a really positive message, and I think where I'm going to go with it is what would I tell my younger self? Because oftentimes, that's for me, like, what some of the mistakes you make in talking to young people. Yes. I'm sure you do it too, because you're influential too. You're giving me a lot of flowers, but somebody needs to give you yours, because
I appreciate you, bro.
You do reach out to the young folks, and you try to stop them from bumping their head. You try to share some sweat and equity, whether they receive it or not.
Exactly.
I think that's where I'm on. I'm on that moon right now, where I just want to plant flowers and trees. I want to plant trees for people that come after me to enjoy the shade.
Exactly. I feel you.
Because we stand on the shoulders of a lot of people that did not have a lot of the opportunity.
Exactly.
It was funny. When I went to college, I really learned a lot of different things about, what a nuclear setting was. And I used to feel strange when I would go to my friends' homes from the South. Yeah. And there wasn't a whole lot of yelling and screaming and cussing, because that's what I was familiar with. Right. I thought that it happened so much, I thought it was normal.
No, we did think it was normal.
It was normal. Like, okay, somebody get ready to get cussed out, somebody owe somebody some money, somebody got drunk. And I never forget, as a kid, we would leave. I remember we'd be putting on our coats, and it would be like a whole full-blown argument. And then when we get ready to leave, the kids were ready to leave, and there'd be like a ceasefire. And they'd come here, baby, give me some sugar. And then they'd stop. And then, then
they go right back at it.
Yeah, you owe me $10 for 19. Oh, man. But that was a foundation. The foundation, some might call it dysfunction, but I think it's an education that you can't buy. Because when you come from that lens, you appreciate it. One of the biggest questions that I ask people that before they can work for me is that whether or not do you have dysfunctional experience? Because we're dealing with real people, we're dealing with a lot of dysfunction, we're dealing with a lot of conflict. And if it's something that's going to make you grab your pearls and run out of the room, then you're probably not fit.
Yeah, you're not built.
No, you're not built for this.
You're not built for it.
In a hospital or a facility, you have people that you can call when things go awry. When you're in somebody's home and conflict arises, it's up to you to kind of resolve it.
Yes, definitely.
In a way that's going to be satisfactory to everybody.
Yep.
So having that dysfunctional experience, in my opinion, is a plus.
Okay. So now listen, y'all, again, this has been a great interview with like I said, the proprietor of Always Best Care Senior Living. As you see, he's multitasked, he's multifaceted in all of the things that he do. We appreciate you, bro, for coming on to our show.
Thank you for having me.
Really, the Dream Teams, we appreciate you. Bills, of course, we miss you, salute you, and we hope to see you back on the set next week. Again, y'all know where y'all can reach us on YouTube. That's Total Define Entertainment. Again, this is the Dream Teams. We got my man B Green. Appreciate you, brother. Thank you for showing us love.
One thing before I go, in the spirit of love, I came here, but we're known for giving out stuff. So I know you're going to do it later on today.
Definitely, yeah. You can share with them.
So Always Best Care Senior Services is a proud sponsor of the Linton AC concert, where they're going to have Nori, Fat Joe, Remy Ma, headlined by Busta Rhymes, going down this Saturday, March 29th in Atlantic City's Boardwalk Hall. We got tickets that we're going to go ahead and raffle off.
Yes, we will.
Well,
a little later, when y'all see, we got some other shows coming, so a little later. See, he already gave y'all a surprise giveaway, but not yet.
We're down with Platinum Productions. Shout out to Platinum Productions.
Yeah, shout out to Platinum Productions.
Yeah.
Notch, you got anybody want you shout out before we get out of here, brother?
Oh, man, I just want to thank you for coming on here, man. We appreciate you because he's also member on PIW. You know what I'm
That's right.
saying?
Yes, we got
So
we got this whole thing going.
he wear a lot of hats.
Yes, he does.
You know what I'm saying? So you know y'all can reach me, OBNOX, ROUX, _PIW on IG. And we like to tell y'all, this is a very live studio audience, y'all.
Yes, it is. And we appreciate
this wasn't
it.
fabricated.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And y'all know your boy Edub. Y'all can reach me on eStacksDo. That's on Instagram. I'm Eric Frazier on Facebook. Listen, this has been a great interview. This has
Thank
been
you
a
for
great
having me.
time. We appreciate him. We hope to be on his platform sooner than later. We're going to make all of this work, y'all. Like I said, the teamwork is the
Makes
dream
the dream work.
Teamwork makes
And
the
listen,
dream
when
work.
we talk about availability, what is it?
It's the best ability.
There you go. So listen, from your boy to y'all, we appreciate y'all. We love y'all. Again, that's Edubz and Total Define Entertainment.
And y'all ain't hammer.
Peace.